It's going to be very difficult for Shaun Micallefs to be able to send this up.
Wiki wiki wah, wiki 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 wah wah wah, wiki 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 wah wah wah. Wiki wah. Well, remember the old days when all we had to deal with was a global pandemic? Life was simpler back then. When someone compared somewhere to Nazi Germany, it was because of border closures. Not because they're actually crossing them to invade your country. The other thing is, I feel like such an idiot. I mean, you think you know a guy for years, he likes animals, he enjoys the outdoors, participating in sports, hanging out with cool friends, goes out with a lovely young woman, he lives in a secret luxury fortress built into a mountain, addresses the nation from a room with golden walls, poisons his political opponents and invaded the Ukraine 7 years ago, and he turns around and he does something like this. You know, I'm glad that Tony Abbott had the guts to shirt front him back in 2014. You know, I bet that made him realise he wasn't going to get away with doing exactly the sort of thing he's doing now. So too, our current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is not afraid to call out the Putin regime from 14,500 kilometres away. For the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men not to eventually put some sanctions in place. And the PM is serious about this. He has called for Australian banks to be
put on alert for suspicious transactions.
Yes, and we know from the findings of the Banking Royal Commission and the record-breaking fines imposed by Austrac for more than 23 million breaches of their money laundering regulations, that if there's anyone you can trust to do the right thing, it's these guys. Now, when the government tells them to do something, unless it's passing on the interest rate cuts, they do it. Now, the more cynical among you might say, well, what's the point of Australia imposing sanctions when we do so little business with Russia? Isn't this just an empty gesture, meaningless lip service to create the illusion of an impression of an idea of a strong leadership in order to fool us that the PM is a safe pair of thumbs in the lead up to an election he looks like otherwise losing? Well, as the PM said to his official biographer, Carl Stefanovic, just the other morning...
It's important for the entire international community to be at one, regardless of whether they're liberal democracies or other regimes.
Exactly. It is important, and I'm not saying this just to undercut it in a moment, to make those sorts of commitments on the world stage as a global citizen, regardless of whether individually they make much of a difference, to show solidarity with the rest of the international community, just like we did at the UN Climate Summit last year. And the PM was onto all of this pretty early. A week before the invasion, he said this.
What we are seeing in Ukraine is looking regrettably inevitable.
Now, of course, anything that you're actually seeing looks inevitable because it's already in the process of happening. But I'm nitpicking here, and that's the last thing I want to do on this show tonight. The PM also said this.
The likelihood of an invasion in Ukraine by Russia is imminent.
Yes, the likelihood being imminent rather than the invasion itself. But as I say, this is not a time to nitpick.
Russia has only one decision that it can make, and that is to withdraw.
As it turned out, there was another decision they could make. Anyway, yes, applaud our PM. Yes, why not? No, you're done? All right. Anyway, that was then, and the important thing that now is...
The moment that other countries put in place strong and severe sanctions, we will be in lockstep with them.
So, the PM reinforcing our stature on the world stage there, in that the very moment someone else shows some leadership, we will immediately follow. And And so Australia has, since the invasion, adopted the international foreign policy of speaking loudly and carrying a small stick. Specifically by
imposing travel bans and financial punishment on 8 members of Russia's National Security Council.
And those travel bans are really going to hurt too, because now those guys aren't going to get here for Moomba. Now, the West has reacted swiftly, though, with the UK PM Boris Johnson announcing that all major Russian banks will be removed from the UK financial system, while the US vowed to remove more than half of Russia's high-tech imports. China, too, has come down hard on Russia, pledging to remove more of Russia's wheat and barley from Russia. Have we been going about our trade relations all wrong, Joe Mellibert, from the Prime Minister's office? Should Dan Tehan declare war on New Zealand, or perhaps someone we could beat like Tasmania?
Shaun, the PM has reacted in the way he has, not in order to puff himself up without actually having to do anything, but because
Australians always stand up to bullies.
Well, bully is a very strong word, but I suppose the PM is on the right side of history here in using such language. Wasn't it Neville Chamberlain who described Hitler's invasion of Poland as naughty? And George Bush, who dubbed Osama bin Laden as overtired and silly?
Sure. When you're a major player strutting the international stage like Scott is, you still have to be tactful, respectful and diplomatic with your world leader counterparts.
Unless, of course, they're French.
Well, that is the exception that proves the rule, obviously, but the PM's not afraid to tell it like it is, when what it is isn't what someone is saying it is. He's been very clear about that.
They're not peacekeepers, they're invaders. And that's how we see it, and we'll call it out. And if they don't like it, that's tough.
It's impressive. What is he, 9 years old?
Well, it'll certainly make Putin think twice next time, assuming he ever gave us a moment's thought in the first place.
What's the end game here for Russia, Dre Mellor? Is Putin attempting to reassemble the Soviet Union, and will all the pieces fit back together again? What glue is he using? Will it be able to hold water if, in my analogy, it's a vase? Or should the president manage to put all the pieces back together, Humpty Dumpty turn out to be a rare Fabergé egg that he can't insure?
Yeah, all right, Stan Grant. You want to get on with the end of your question before I fall asleep, or should I just do it now?
I'm talking to Dre Mellibert. Later on, walking your cat. Why you're an idiot if you do it, and wearing hats thinking you look pretty good when in fact you look stupid. That's coming up on No Judgment. Finally, Dre Mellor, can I ask you about the PM's $804 million commitment to strengthening Australia's presence in Antarctica for reasons of national security? Labor's position on this announcement is that...
Now, there's been long-standing bipartisan support for the importance of Antarctica.
So I take it there's no policy difference there?
Oh, make no mistake, Shaun. Anthony Albanese is Antarctica's pick to win the election. Labor is soft on Antarctica. Scott Morrison will never be Antarctica's candidate, and our government will never be the preferred partner of a continent that's chosen to intimidate this country and has sought to threaten this country by melting.
Well, thank you very much, Dre Mellor. And for balance, we should ask some questions of Bizarro, Dre Mellibert.
Goodbye, Shaun.
Bizarro, Dre Mellor, what would you say are the key milestones of the Morrison-led LNP government?
In no particular order, me say climate change, COVID rollout, pork barrelling, rorts, lack of transparency, Christian Porter, women, deterioration of relationship with China, submarine fiasco, backgrounding, lying, Hawaii, Biden not even knowing who Morrison am, short-term game in long-term job, putting Stuart Robert in charge of anything, letting Barnaby Joyce open mouth, undeserved job keeper.
Interesting. Bizarro Dre Mellibert there.
Hello.
Bizarro Dre Mellibert and actual Dre Mellibert. Now, that's a pretty good interview, wasn't it? Short and to the point. And I don't want to sound full of myself, but I think I should take over hosting 7:30 when Lee Sales finishes up in July. Frankly, thank you. Thank you. Frankly, the audience and I can't think of anyone who could do a better job. And so tonight, I officially name myself as the new host. And we cross now live to Laura Tingle for her reaction. Thank you, Laura. Well, to domestic issues now, and pork barrelling electorates has become so widespread in this country that it was refreshing to see the pork barrelling of a single business in the Deputy Premier's electorate last week. $500,000 worth to a fruit and vegetable grower, Costa Group. Now, the great thing about Barnaby Joyce is that...
The Chattanooga choo-choo.
This is not indicative of some broader policy of rorting that we've seen with other ministers. In fact, as far as the NBN goes, the government's made it very clear they're against taxpayer-funded fibre upgrades. Man from the pub who gives Barnaby his ideas, Mick Nobone, some might see this as flying in the face of the government's avert policy. By which I mean it's inconsistent, if not completely the polar opposite of what they said they do.
No, Shaun. It's completely the polar opposite of what they said they would never do. There's a big difference. Plus, the NBN rollout is different from the rolling out of pork barrels. The NBN is fibre to the node, and this pork barrelling is delivered direct to the premises. So, unfortunately, when the pork is NBN, then something's got to give.
Yeah. In this case, it's the taxpayer that's got to give $500,000 to a private business.
A fruit and vegetable business, Shaun. And everybody needs fruit and vegetables.
What, to throw at Barnaby when he's making a campaign speech in his electorate?
Shaun, you are so cynical. This was just a common or garden fruit and vegetable publicly listed company that Barnaby's partner, Vicky Champion, owns shares in. And if you infer anything untoward about that, then you have to answer to me.
No, I'm not inferring anything.
Just as well.
It's just that when Labor suggested a program of expanding the NBN to premises back in November, the Minister for Communications, Paul Fletcher, said that what Labor was proposing was more wasteful government spending of taxpayers' money, and that's what Labor does, because that's what Labor's good at.
He says they're good at wasting taxpayers' money. Can't they take a compliment?
Well, thanks very much, Mick. And for coming in tonight, please accept this bucket just in case.
Well, you might want to make it two. Sure. It tends to come from more than one place.
Still to come, baptism's invalid because priest used wrong word. Still, at least he used the correct font. And with those in aged care now under severe threat, yet again, is the vaccine actually protecting them? This 7 News reporter isn't so sure.
And while most residents who are triple vaxxed seem to be avoiding death,
yes, they seem to be, so she's obviously not convinced. Could be some post-mortem spasming going on there. Plus, Uber Eats unhappy with supersized sandwiches. But right now, I'd like to answer the accusation from The Australian that as the free world shrinks, Australia is dithering when it comes to its own resilience. And I'd like to do that with a little bit of plain speaking. OK, now Australia is the lucky country. As our reaction to the pandemic proved, we could leave things to the last minute if we attended them at all in the case of nursing homes. And apart from a few earlier-than-usual deaths, it turns out OK in the end. No worries. Now, it's the same with the war in Ukraine. It's not on our doorstep, it's down the block, round the corner and a few streets up. So we can afford to carry on with our clueless pontificating because no one important is actually listening. The thing is that America, the world's neighbourhood watch coordinator, has actually gone down there to see what's going on. And the big worry for us is that while they're off doing that, the house up the road from us will invade Taiwan. Now, obviously, if there's trouble, we would, as good neighbours, pop over and knock on the door. But, unfortunately, we don't have any knuckles. France was making us some knuckles, but we had to cancel them, and now we're waiting for some new ones from the UK and the US. Not only that, but our fingers, the ADF, have their hands full at the moment looking after aged care because it got a bit too much for Richard Colbeck. Now you're probably thinking, OK, we've got no knuckles, fingers or hands, why can't we just ring the doorbell with our stump and then run away? Well, the thing is, we prefer the softly approach when it comes to cowering and fear. We need to be part of a gang if we're going to take on someone bigger than us, a group of strong-armed friends willing to carry us into battle, friends like India, the US and the UK. Now, as the PM made very clear when he opened our Quad talks a few weeks back, when it comes to Chinese coercion...
None of you understand better than we do, and that's a great comfort to us.
Yes, none of you understand better than we do. You being India, the US and the UK, and we being either that same group plus us or maybe just Australia. And that, whatever that is a great comfort to us. Us being either all of us or maybe just Australia. Should we be worrying, Vice Recap and Voice of Bobo Gargle?
No, not at all, Shaun. The new Chinese ambassador to Australia has made it very clear that...
China is willing to work with Australia to meet each other halfway.
Yeah, I don't know how reassuring that is when the halfway point means we'll be meeting him in the South China Sea.
That's not a problem either, Shaun. At the rate China keeps building their islands, halfway just keeps getting closer and closer to us. So pretty soon there won't be so far for us to travel. Eventually, we won't have to even leave dock, which will be handy given the state of our frigates, the price of fuel and the continued non-existence of our submarines.
You think they'll get that close?
Well, Shaun, the Chinese company leasing the port of Darwin for 99 years isn't called Landbridge for nothing.
I'm talking to Bobo Gargle.
Who's he talking to?
Bobo, Australia aren't going to help defend Ukraine militarily against Russia now, are they?
Oh, it's not that we don't want to, Shaun. What I wouldn't give to get Vladimir Putin alone in a room with Ben Roberts-Smith.
But no boots on the ground on the front line?
Well, not unless our feet are in them running away from it, Shaun, no. As the PM has initially indicated, the best way for Australia to support Ukraine is by providing non-lethal military equipment.
Non-lethal?
Well, Shaun, the ADF's proven itself a world leader in acquiring non-lethal, in fact, barely operational military equipment. So Ukraine could rest assured they were getting the best of the best. Then, when the PM saw that the rest of the Western world was sending stuff that actually worked, we decided to get on their coattails and pledged to send some lethal aid as well.
Yeah, which, going by the government's record, should start arriving in early 2026.
As the PM says, Shaun...
I've taken nothing off the table.
Including the dead cats he's been throwing on it since his mishandling of the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Bobo Gargle. Well, it's all very well to call them names and ask the banks to watch their savings accounts, but what else can be done from a distance that isn't going to put us out too much? Senator Jackie Lambie, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the thing is, cyber, if you have the rest of the Western world against him, we should be doing everything we can to create havoc with their IT systems anywhere and everywhere that we can in Russia. And seriously, don't tell me we don't have the capacity to be able to do that. That's exactly what we should be doing. We should be using everything we've got in cyber and fighting against this to make it absolutely havoc for Russia. So their comms are down at all times. Anything else, go in there and smash them with cyber, because I don't know what else they've got unless they're going to start sending rockets in there, to be honest with you.
Well, thank you very much, Jackie Lambie there. Prosecco Mule is Jackie Lambie's interpreter. What did she mean by any of that?
Cyber. Shaun, bloody cyber. Seriously, don't tell Jackie we don't have the capacity to be able to do that.
Do what exactly?
Well, create havoc anywhere and everywhere. It's exactly what we should be doing.
Yeah, but what, though?
Cyber. Just make it absolutely havoc with bloody cyber, to be honest with you. Go in there and bloody smash them with cyber.
Yeah, but how do we make it absolutely havoc?
Oh, I don't know. Get bloody Craig Kelly to spam Putin with all those bloody text messages he's been sending. Get bloody ScoMo to like Instagram and curry at Sergei Lavrov. Put all those bloody Russian bloody oligarchs in a Centrelink phone queue for a few days. Seriously, just get in there and do it, to be honest with you.
All right, OK. And the missiles that she mentioned?
Oh, bloody...
All right, well, thank you very much, Prosecco, for coming in. But before you go, something to take home with you, a slice of birthday cake to celebrate ABC's 90th year. No sugar because she's diabetic, and no gluten because she's got elderly onset celiac disease, and because Auntie has developed dysphagia and can't swallow. We usually just mush it up there into a paste with an osmotic laxative because Auntie, she does have trouble straining at stool. We've also crushed in her hypertension medication and some antipsychotic drugs because she's been getting violent with some of the other patients. Anyway, do enjoy. And Bobo, as we go to the break, we have a slice for you too. There we go.
Delightful.
Enjoy yourself. And we'll be back right after this break.
She's unorthodox. She's uncompromising. And she's stolen a policewoman's uniform. Please report any sightings of Wendy Louise McCrockshofter to the police immediately.
Recent changes in international recycling markets mean that local contractors are having to dump recyclables in landfill. That's why councils nationwide are rolling out a new program to tackle this problem, the Wheelie Bin Trio. The important thing for you to know is that you don't have to do anything different, so you can continue to separate your recyclables and organics from your general waste. Remember, coffee cups can't go into the recycling, but the lids can. The new technology automatically recombines your garbage, saving time and money for the contractors, which means the council can keep your rates low. Now that's what I call a great Aussie innovation.
Well, off the back, thighs, breasts and buttocks of revelations of Bob Hawke's sex life in a new Tell It All Again book comes another facepalm for Labor with news that two-time Prime Minister Kevin Rudd wanted to make it third time lucky by contesting the federal seat of Fairfax at the next election. Several anonymous ALP figures say it was Kevin's idea. Kevin says local ALP branch members approach him all the time. Team Albo, Vagary Bell Chamber, Noblet Mule Puke and Cardamom Pie. Where does the truth lie?
In a shallow grave off the Bruce Highway near the Maroochydore and Mons Road interchange, Shaun.
That fever dream is over, Shaun. Buried and forgotten in our zeal to propel Albo to the highest office in the land, despite his obvious shortcomings.
Check out this pic. Isn't he sexy? He looks like a young, undead Richie Benno.
Yeah, would Kevin Rudd have been such a bad idea? Third time's a charm, they say.
A charm? More like that soul transference spell in Harry Potter that creates a Horcrux.
Shaun, K. Rudd re-entering politics would be the equivalent of, like, letting a bull back into a china shop after he'd gone down the pub, gotten pissed, put on a pair of roller skates and smoked some meth.
Fun to watch, but impossible to claim the damages back on your insurance.
Yeah, well, he still seems very popular, though.
The idea of Kevin Rudd is always more popular than the reality.
Yeah, he's like a dream lover, you know, all very well climbing in your window and getting his kid off in your imagination, but if it happens in real life, you want to chase him away with a broom and call the fire department.
Yeah, well, he might not have ambitions for the top job. He might be quite happy sitting in the back benches.
As fucking if.
Getting K. Rudd to keep his lust for power bridled is like trying to get Paul Keating to keep his press clippings in his pants every time he gets interviewed by one of the drooling acolytes from his fan club here at the ABC.
Yeah. Better Kevin stay out of harm's way and do what he does best, whinge incessantly about Rupert Murdoch on social media while pretending he's not driven by white-hot personal revenge, thus drawing fire away from Albo as he neutralises yet another policy difference between him and ScoMo.
Well, thank you very much, Team Albo, and for coming along tonight, this Sultana. All right, now coming up with a Nationals-led Senate committee inquiry handing down their findings calling for stricter food labelling of plant-based meat products, we ask, is this just yet another frontier in the government's war on identity politics? A special report from the Clockwork Movement Dance Ensemble.
Eating meat is not a great idea. Wasteland and clogs arteria. Return the cows and sheep to nature. Eat instead peas and potato. Animals are sentient beings.
And, just so we won't be accused of bias in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, my interview with the fictional Captain Ramius from Hunt for Red October.
Shaun, what you must understand is this is not about scaring the West by saying we'll launch missiles unless they submit.
Oh, really?
Certainly, since Chernobyl and the disintegration of the Soviet state, Russia has been lost and embarrassed and seeking solace in the past.
Is that right?
Sure, when the Kursk sank in 2000, we suffered the shame of the US saying they'd rescue us, should we ask. But these hostilities are less about saving face and more about Vladimir Putin making up for the fact that he's got a small penis.
Well, thank you. Anyway, thank you, Captain Ramius. Anyway, that interview coming up later, not now. Well, calls for wage increases to keep pace with inflation are, unlike the wages themselves, increasing. The ACTU claims workers are facing the largest cuts in real wages in more than 2 decades. The Chamber of Commerce and Industry's new shill, Leo Hatred, joins me now. Leo, is business going to do anything about falling real wages, or is it business as usual in that you won't?
Well, Shaun, if real wages are a problem, business is happy to pay people in a form they're more comfortable with, be it day-old produce or leftover Blu-ray copies of Shallow Hal.
No, I don't think the concept of wages is the problem so much as that they're falling.
Well, Shaun, business would love nothing more than to pay people more money.
Really?
If they're at board level, sure. But anywhere down the food chain, and increases in wages are unsustainable unless they're driven by increased productivity.
All right, and how do businesses do that?
Well, they don't.
No?
Why would they? It's not like there's a business case for it. They'd have to spend time and money working out how to make themselves more productive, and it'd end up costing them more than the wage increases. Far better to let Treasury or the Productivity Commission work out which corporate taxes to cut or safety regulations businesses should no longer have to comply with.
Well, thank you very much, Leo. Leo Hatred there, in fact, still here. Now, we were talking about the Antarctic earlier, and like the Coalition's popularity, its sea ice levels are at a record low. And in both cases, the problem is man-made. Unfortunately for sea ice, it's battling global warming, an opponent far less likely to mystifyingly lose than Labor. And so the PM has committed a lot of money to Antarctica, much in the way the Coalition would a marginal seat. As the PM said,
we need to keep eyes on Antarctica.
Because so much of it is melting. Now, some of this grant will fund a new $17.4 million krill aquarium in order to improve our understanding of krill. Strange person off the street, Yehoba Day Spa. Is krill misunderstood?
So dreadfully misunderstood, Shaun. Just because billions of krill routinely die every day devoured by whales and seals doesn't mean krill don't yearn to improve their lot in life. To move higher up the food chain, krill have hopes and dreams like the rest of us. And despite what anti-crustaceans say, their voice deserves to be heard.
With some sort of hydrophone, presumably.
Obviously. But Shaun called me cynical, but why is it only in the run-up to an election that we hear all this krill talk from the government? Where was all this concern for krill over the last 3 years? Did you ever hear Scott Morrison mention krill?
Did he make a curry with them?
It's just typical pre-election krill barreling bullshit!
Well, thank you for your time tonight, Yehoba, and please accept with our compliments this beautiful spit hood from Philippe of Double Bay.
Nice.
Wow. So, this is where you grew up? This is where he grew up?
Well, this is where he lives.
Wow. So tell me, what was this area like back in his really early days?
It was just sort of like this. Like, he's only 2.
Must have brought back some memories.
Join child actor Tobias Windchill this Sunday on This Old House. More people get out of cars in Australia than in any other country.
Getting out of the car holds a special place in our hearts.
From blue cars to white cars, getting out of cars is the ultimate shared experience for Australians.
It just blows my mind to think that only 70 years ago the first woman was allowed to get out of a car.
It's been the focus of a revolution in social and cultural acceptance. Discover the inspiring stories behind people getting out of cars. Soon on ABC and iView.
And welcome back. Well, will a gas-led recovery lead to a brighter future for our manufacturing industry? No is the short answer, but the government isn't one to take no for an answer, particularly when the gas industry has invested all that money in them to say yes. Zap dingbats.
I don't want people to think that money is some sort of payoff in return for us getting exactly what we want. These are political donations we make to both parties to cancel out their effect, but leave them with a sense of obligation towards us. Whoever gets in feels beholden to us. Whoever doesn't won't have announced any policies that can get in our way during the election. Plus, they're tax deductible. It's win-win on both occasions for us.
Excuse me, Mr. Lowen. We're doing some pipe maintenance outside Sector 7 and we found this coal.
Put it back, mate.
We also found some hydrogen.
We're only interested in gas here.
The politicians, though, deny such donations by access to them.
Not at all. If we have a $5,000 a plate dinner and the gas company execs decide to buy a few tables, come along and sit next to us, well, that's up to them. We just happen to be eating in proximity to each other. We're not obliged to listen to them when they talk to us, nor are we obliged to, say, in the case of gas, pretend that a response to COVID would be to set up a board of advisors largely predisposed to pushing for the gas industry that they're already aligned with. If they want to then recommend that we subsidise gas-fired power stations with taxpayer dollars because the market sees it as a commercial dead end, that's their business, literally. If we decide to follow that advice, no matter how dripping with self-interest it is, then that's up to us.
You say you want to keep the price of gas low.
Down, down. Price of gas down. For the voters, yes, absolutely. #1 priority.
But at the same time, a gas-led recovery will lead to a slew of high-paying jobs.
Exactly. More jobs, higher pay, money, employment.
So how can the price of gas be so low per unit that it's cheap for the consumer, but at the same time still be generating sufficient profits to go towards increasing the income of workers?
You'd have to ask the guys on the COVID Recovery Board about that one. That was their department.
How do we keep prices low and still build in a margin on the cost?
And does the subsidy go toward keeping the price low or the wages high, or do they go to paying the shareholder dividends or executive bonuses?
Listen, we've got a lot of gas, right? We need to shift that stock. At the moment, it's expensive and nobody wants to put it in their shop. Government subsidies will make it a less unattractive proposition. We get our money.
And presumably the provider then sells it and the consumer then buys it.
Oh, no, that's up to the market. We don't want to interfere with any of that. I'm not interested. But put that oil back in the ground immediately.
What about this uranium?
No. Yeah.
Well, not coming up because Starstruck is on in a minute.
No, I'm the crazy one, says North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Prime Minister relatable, declares focus group. And we had a fascinating 45-minute chat, says Piers Morgan of meeting with Scott Morrison.
And finally...
Russia has been banned from the Eurovision Song Contest.
So Putin got what he wanted. Goodbye.
Die, baby.